voters. So that is the second thing or danger it reveals, that this candidate clearly means he's unpopular to the people. And the greater damage to that is that in the end, if this candidate emerges as a result of buying or selling the votes, it means that he owes no legal or moral responsibility to the electorates and the community or the society. Hence, you find even as we speak, that explains why many of the political class, you see how they carry on with government or governance with a sense of not being accountable to the people. Because clearly, on the day of elections, they had bought your will, they bought your conscience. It wasn't that they actually represented the collective will of the people. So that is one greater damage in allowing this primitive culture of buying votes or selling votes.
Let's look at the other side of the coin. Yes. I haven't mentioned the laws that prohibit votes buying. When the concept of vote buying is mentioned, or maybe economic transaction, there are two parties involved. We have the seller and the buyer. What happened to the seller? What is the state of the seller in this discourse?
No, the seller is the man who is aspiring to... okay, the seller is the man who receives. Yes. That is the electorate. It's born out of poor understanding of a democratic society one and what represents good governance. In other words, his or her civic duty in an electioneering process, that in a democratic society, power belongs to the people. And that is where you get the phrase, free and fair election. The voter or the electorate is not supposed to be under any compulsion or inducement to exercise his or her franchise. Democratic society entails or encourages that from the beginning, he has to be free in all ramifications. He shouldn't be subject to any form of harassment or intimidation to vote against his or her will. And we are insisting on this because that clearly explains or largely explains the reason why we are suffering this unfounded economic hardship, because the leader there do not actually represent our conscience. So that is the motivation to why the seller is willing. First, there is no understanding. So perhaps one fundamental mistake we have made as a people and as a government since 1999, we are privileged to inherit a democratic society, is that we needed to commit more time, energy, and resources to educate the people on how democratic society and what represents good government. We had not done that. The NOA, National Renewal Agency, is just existing on papers. In fact, sometimes I'm privileged with leadership, they'll tell you that if you visit their office themselves, sorry to say, the office itself requires orientation. You will find...
Not to forget, yes. The NOA is a government parastatal, so you don't expect them to do otherwise.
No doubt. The government is expected to be concerned. The Constitution says its primary duty is to improve on the welfare of the people. So there is no sentiment that from the beginning is expected. Why are we putting up budgets every financial year? It is to identify those things that will improve the welfare of the ordinary citizens. In Senate climes, nobody supports you. I recall that the likes of Edward Kennedy, he was brother to F. Kennedy, one-time president of America. He passed on at 72 years. He joined the U.S. Senate at 30. So he had served in the U.S. Senate for 42 years before he passed on. What is the motive? Why was he always revolt? It was because he was seen being committed to the socio-economic welfare, debating policies of improving health service, educational service. That is how government is seen in succeeding societies. We cannot afford to be living or pretending as if we're an island. After all, Nigeria is a member of the nation of committees. So we can't continue to think that government exists in isolation, or because the movers or the operators of government, we must accept what they think individually. That is not how societies are built. It's a collective responsibility. And the government must respect the aspiration. That is one of the fundamental mistakes. The manner in which we pass budget, the people are not seen in the process of planning. So it is not their exclusive preserve to, carry on governance the way they like, their own whims and caprices. No, the ordinary people must be seen in the process. So it is the failure. That is why they had not considered it important or very necessary to commit more resources. In South Africa till today, they commit more resources to communicate to the people how democratic society works. Since 1994, they held the first democratic election. That is the same road Nigeria is going through. We've had, out of the 61 years we are now, the military have had a greater portion of our nationhood. So since 1999, it was important for every responsible leader in government to realize that the only way the people can participate effectively is to encourage the orientation to move away from the understanding that democratic governance in Nigeria means one man, decision flowing from one man dictating who becomes what. That was the military culture. And if you look at the average Nigerian today, that is the mentality we've carried on with. Why you find citizens not participating in the process of developing government policies and programs.
Okay,
so it is not correct.
Pat,
Yes,
let's look at Nigerian political precedents. And again, the notion electorate have when the issue of elections is being raised. And one of those notions is the fact that they believe their votes don't count. Now, if that notion remains, and again, the issue of vote buying is still seen in the 21st century on camera, isn't it high time electorate dissuade attention or that notion that their votes don't count?
First, the only way they can dissuade that notion is stakeholders, the quality of leaders they are talking to. Remember that right now, as citizens, we are all committed to all manner of organizations, faith-based organizations, social organizations, educational organizations. So it will depend on the quality of information that is transmitted from this. But in fact, if you ask me now, Nigeria, we are becoming too religious without righteousness in the land. And since we can no longer trust the political class, I am appealing that, see, if our pastor or general overseer says anything, even if inside the hottest sun or rain, we are willing to obey. So we should use that platform now to begin to communicate the only way the ordinary voters can dissuade themselves from this vote buy, because they are the only people now they can listen to. But unfortunately so, the really tend to keep making them feel as if it is not their legal or moral responsibility to participate in political leadership, which is not correct. I have always argued that. That is not correct. Even in our good books, there are evidences that it is part of the Christian responsibility to participate in building the next government. So that is one fundamental way the citizens can dissuade themselves, because that is one source they can have this understanding that it is their legal and moral duty to freely, without compulsion or harassment, exercise, who their choice of who becomes their leader. And the fear that, again, what the political class has succeeded in doing before now is to starve them to be loyal. And that is because the ordinary people also wrongly support the fact that once they get into government house, it represents their biological father's inheritance. If you have your father in your home, he wants to pass on and he has several wealth, he calls a lawyer to reduce it to a will. And he calls the first son, I give you my 2 hotels. That is the way the people see the leaders in government house. So whatever the governor or president or senator does with the money, they wrongly make him feel that it is gotten from his biological family. So that is why we are appealing to faith-based organizations now that seem to be the only social platform that can mobilize and sensitize the people to not to accept that primitive thinking. That one major difference from tyranny or dictatorship is to encourage popular participation, that the rights of the power is shared equally. That it is not true that the few of them in government, that commonwealth, our common patrimony, is their biological exclusive preserve. That is not correct.
But according to Center for Democracy and Development, observers said the issue of vote buying and selling were seen across the 21 local government areas of Anambra State. Now, if this actually happened, what should the people in these local governments expect from whoever wins the election in the next 4 years, if they actually saw that their strength and power, which is their vote? What should they expect?